As the years pass by, time takes its toll. Rising to the occasion may become more difficult. Your lack of confidence and passion doesn't have to affect your relationships. If your foreign policy is impotent in the face of chemical attacks on civilians, you need Fire-agra. Put the power back in your superpower. Fire-agra is America's #1 response to foreign policy impotence. With a proven formula of cruise missiles and airstrikes, you'll be able to lay down that red line for real. So fire away. Get back on top with Fire-agra. Because you don't have to live with foreign policy impotence. Fire-agra is not for everyone. If your firing lasts for longer than 8 days, pull out immediately. In clinical trials, Fire-agra has led to civilian deaths followed by unchecked rage and aggression. Fire-agra is not guaranteed to prevent moral obscenities, and in some extremist cases, Fire-agra may lead to outbreaks of ascendant jihadists. Used as directed, Fire-agra does not actually prevent foreign policy impotence. It merely increases blood flow and feelings of accomplishment and victorious arousal. Some users of Fire-agra may become dependent and even addicted. Previous addiction to Fire-agra may lead to increased foreign policy impotence, leading to further reliance on Fire-agra. Ask your president if Fire-agra is right for you.
Ah, yes, dripping with manliness. We are Radio Free Canada, and we've got things up for you as we take on Syria in video radio.
Absolutely. That's a big deal in the news these days.
So while you're trying to escape all of the news and propaganda, the way they're hyping this thing out, let's take a look at Syria. Video radio with Radio Free Canada. I'm Darren Howard.
And I'm Robert Nisbet.
Okay, let's run the clip. Check it out.
Free. Hundreds dead. It's images like these, pushing British Prime Minister David Cameron to act.
Young men and women gasping for air and suffering the most agonizing deaths.
Cameron wants military action in Syria, and today he's set to work trying to convince the British Parliament to approve just that. Cameron and his supporters insist the legal conditions have been met for intervention, and they firmly believe the Syrian government used chemical weapons on its own people, a claim bolstered today by the release of a British intelligence assessment stating it's highly likely that the regime is to blame. Despite that, Cameron faces fierce opposition. Opposition parties here want any decision to act postponed until the UN has concluded its work in Syria. Like many Western nations, Canada is keen to review their findings, but when it comes to military involvement,
we have no plans of our own to have a Canadian military mission.
As for Britain's move towards military intervention, it looks like that won't happen anytime soon. Tonight, the government's proposed motion on possible military action in Syria was rejected. In response, Prime Minister Cameron said it's clear the British Parliament does not want action, and he will act accordingly. Melanie Nagy, CTV News, London.
So this is ramping up to be a G20 of all G20s.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more like G19 plus one.
You know, when you said that earlier, that was awesome. That hit it right on the money. We can see it worldwide, and we're paying attention to the news. And what they're saying is America has no credibility whatsoever.
Yeah, I think if I was a prosecutor, I'd be hesitant to take this one before the judge.
Yeah, but there's Cameron saying, hey, everything legal has been taken care of.
Yeah.
We're here to challenge the status quo, to make sure that you have an objective opinion. We want you to check our facts. We don't say trust us. We are not corporate news. We're recorded in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, this Friday, September the 6th, 2013.
That's right.
And that's about as corporate as we get. So let's take a look at the argument. We got a clip. What do you got?
We got why this doesn't add up.
Okay, check it out.
New evidence is surfacing about just who might be behind the chemical attacks, the latest view being that the Saudis could have supplied the rebel forces with chemical weapons, and in the untrained hands of the rebels, they detonated in a tragic accident. In an exclusive report for Mint Press News, interviews with Syrians on the site of the chemical attacks seem to point to a direct involvement with the Saudis providing the chemical weapons for the attack. Certain rebels received chemical weapons via the Saudi intelligence chief Prince Bandar bin Sultan and were responsible for carrying out the gas attack. That's the thesis put forward by reporters Dale Gavlak and Yaya Abadne. The report quotes the rebels themselves. Quote, "They didn't tell us what these arms were or how to use them," complained a female fighter named Kay. "We didn't know they were chemical weapons. We never imagined they were chemical weapons. When Saudi Prince Bandar gives such weapons to people, he must give them to those who know how to handle and use them," she said. She, like other Syrians, did not want to use their full names for fear of retribution. The article goes on to say that many observers believe Bandar, with his close ties to Washington, has been at the very heart of the push for war by the United States against Assad. Indeed, that he has been involved in the 2.5-year-long civil war in Syria. Interesting, a Saudi connection to a tragic event that precipitates U.S. involvement in a war. When was the last time that happened, and how did that war go? Now, given the uncertainty and the horrific expense of lives, money, and morality we tend to waste in war, who thinks the office of the president should be trusted to make this decision unilaterally?
So, beyond a reasonable doubt, according to Secretary of State Kerry.
Yeah, I know. Isn't he the one who got caught playing poker?
Oh, that was McCain.
Yeah, McCain. Okay, so there they are at the Syria debate thing. I don't even know what this was. Okay, to find out the legality.
It was the Committee on Foreign Relations deciding whether or not they should strike Syria.
Okay, so and there he is playing poker.
Yeah, well, it just kind of reflects the American mindset.
Yeah.
Americans play poker. Russians play chess.
Yeah, see? Right on, man. And being a chess player, I'm always down with that. We are taking a look at the way the international news is looking at this. The chemical attacks that are occurring do not make sense.
Not at all.
It's just you just got to put two and two. There were UN inspectors there. Assad knew about it, and then he posed a chemical attack. Sorry.
Is he crazy? I don't think he's that crazy.
Everybody's pointing at a certain 3-letter acronym that the Americans sort of wander around the planet doing interventionist things with. I would have to say that I'm kind of in that boat.
But there's a lot of other players in the area.
So let's check this out. You decide.
So Bandar Bush was not dead. We saw that he had been dead for a year. We all remember that. Since that attempt against him in July 2012. He resurfaced 1 year later, and his first photo 1 year later is shaking the hands of Vladimir Putin in Moscow. This is a story that I think a lot of people are already familiar with. The famous 4-hour and something meeting between Bandar and Putin, where essentially Bandar was trying to sell to Putin the idea that if you start opposing a UN resolution, a UN Security Council resolution, and he backed off in terms of supporting Assad, well, the Saudis would start buying, for starters, $15 billion in Russian weapons, with more contracts following. They would not interfere with, very important, pipelines. To sum it all up, he said, look, there's going to be a problem for you with the Sochi Olympics. I'm going to release the jihadis that we control. He said blatantly, we control all these Chechens. And not only the Chechens who are in Syria or trafficking between Iraq and Syria, but the Chechens in the Caucasus itself. And Bandar says explicitly, we run all these people, just like he ran 98% of the Mujahideen in the 80s in Afghanistan.
Of course, that's Global Research TV.
That's right. And
okay.
I seem to recall about a year ago, wasn't there a foiled assassination plot against the Saudi ambassador?
Oh,
you remember that?
Right.
To detract us from the Fast and Furious thing.
Yes, yeah, okay.
I think this is the guy that the alleged assassination plot was against.
But all of a sudden, we're taking a look at who funds the rebels, quote-unquote rebels.
The rebels, yes.
Okay. How can you get any accurate information out of a war zone? That's always my big question, because you're only talking about propaganda from one side or the other, or in this case, on 3 sides.
But there are reporters on the ground who are speaking to the people involved, as we saw in that previous clip.
Yeah, okay. So we're collecting up the information. We really do want you to start questioning the official news, because they've got all the hype and the dramatic music wrapped around this nonsense, okay? And you just think that, oh, boy, those war drums are going.
Oh, war drums are beating. But, there are not enough voices saying why they shouldn't go.
So we happen to be here.
As the Obama administration beats the drum for yet another military engagement, Here are 3 reasons we shouldn't go to war with Syria. U.S. foreign policy, especially military action, should proceed from clear and compelling national interests. But neither the President nor anyone in his administration has clarified what America's security stake is in Syria's civil war. Humanitarian interventions are notoriously ineffective in practice. If the President really wants to reduce the violence that's already claimed over 100,000 lives, lobbing cruise missiles or, God forbid, putting boots on the ground is no way to accomplish that. President Obama has said that chemical weapons are a red line that no country should be allowed to cross. But even assuming such weapons were used by the murderous Assad regime, the case for treating poison gas as qualitatively different than far more deadly conventional weapons is hardly clear. Why should weapons that have at most killed a tiny fraction of people in a war be a trigger for action? Obama hasn't just failed to articulate a cause for action, he hasn't even bothered to explain what might constitute victory in Syria. The inherent risks are compounded massively by regional and global politics involving Iran, Jordan, Russia, Israel, and European countries. The U.S. doesn't even have a clear sense of who the Syrian rebels are and what their agenda is. For God's sake, if the past dozen years have taught us anything about foreign policy, it's that military intervention shouldn't be done in a half-assed fashion without clear and widely shared goals. If the Obama administration can't be bothered to articulate why we should fight, who we're helping, and how we would know that we succeeded, it's got no business getting us involved in Syria. For Reason TV, I'm Nick Gillespie.
So he's raising some really good questions. What security concerns are there for the states?
And how will they know when they've won?
Yeah.
When a certain number of Syrians are killed?
So you're saying you're going to go in and do some strikes. We already got the major players lining up with cash to go in.
Why don't they just go in with missiles and dispense bundles of cash?
Yeah.
Maybe that would make them not hate us so much.
You know, it's kind of funny. If you actually went in there and fed people and clothed them and housed them.
That's foreign policy.
Okay, but
There's
they drop a $50,000 bomb on a $5 tent, and they say, well, this is affecting this is an effective war. However, here at home, there are direct ramifications to their nonsense overseas.
Yeah, you have to ask who benefits.
Bombs, they aren't falling yet on Syria, but global financial damage is already being done. Now, gold is what people usually turn to in these uncertain times, and that rush is very much being felt in earnest here. We've got the bullion up $40 an ounce just over the last 2 days alone. Oil prices are surging to their highest level since 2011. That's over concerns that American and British an attack on Syria will bring about serious consequences and threaten global supplies. Now, the Middle East as a whole accounts for over a third of all oil production and holds even more reserves. Now, leading bank Societe Generale has said that a US-led attack on Syria could see the price of oil spike to $150 per barrel. Such a level could have a disastrous impact on the global economy, already challenged by stalling growth, debt, and ongoing recessions as well. Now, sanctions have also severely restricted oil exports from Syria already, so the economic situation there could get even worse as the violence continues. Our stock markets are witnessing a sell-off too. We've got equity markets in the Middle East leading the cash exodus. Neighbouring Turkey has also taken an economic beating as stocks plunge 3%. Now, even more worryingly, this is all happening before the attack has even begun. So most likely more bad news if it does indeed go ahead.
Wow, taking a look at those prices the way that they're going right now. It's kind of ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. Well, war is the banker's richest harvest.
We've got another segment coming up on these war sabers rattling around the world as we get things up for you. Thinking about that first clip with Fiore. I'm Darren Howard.
And I'm Robert Nisbet.
We're right back with more on the World Update on Syria. Please stay tuned and get informed. This is Radio Free Canada.